Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kathy Nickham, the Education Director for the DPC Ed Center, and it is time for our monthly webinar. And I think a few people, I see Elizabeth's comment, a few people are intrigued by the title of our May webinar, which is Illness, Isolation, Dog Poop, and Joy. So I, as well, look forward to understanding more of that title, which I find intriguing. As a reminder, all of our lines are muted. Throughout the webinar, you can type questions in the chat box, and they'll be answered at the end of the program. And then within a week, the webinar recording and the slides will be posted on our website. We encourage you to complete the brief feedback form at the end to share your opinions and suggestions for additional programs. May is Mental Health Month, and we are privileged to partner with the American Psychological Association for today's webinar. Jewel Edwards-Ashman, the APA's Members Communication Manager, is now going to introduce the speaker for our program today. Jewel?
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much. And we are so happy to continue to do another Mental Health Month webinar for DPC members. And I think this month's webinar is going to be a good one. I love the title. So our presenter today is Dr. Jody Jones. Dr. Jones is a clinical psychologist and a clinical associate professor in the Department of Surgery at the University of Iowa. And she's been there since 2009, working with patients and recipients of kidney, pancreas, liver, heart, and lung transplants, as well as living kidney donors, and living liver donors. A little bit of background about her. She received her Ph.D. from the University of Alabama and completed her residency at the University of North Carolina Medical School, which is where she first began working in transplant. And in 2005, she joined Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta, where she helped establish a new liver transplant program. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for doing this presentation today. So I'll hand the mic over to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I'm going to try and make sure I can advance that. Yes, excellent. So I went ahead and made a title page, which I didn't need. And then I went ahead and included another picture of myself, because this is actually what I really look like. It's not that professional picture. Usually my hair is even frizzier than that. The reason I wanted to include this particular one is that the gentleman in the picture frame that I'm holding there is a loved one in my family, and I donated a kidney to him about 2.5 years ago. So not only am I a member of the transplant team, but I have been a living donor, and it's something that has been just a really gratifying part of my life. So I would like to talk about that too, although that is definitely not the focus of today's talk. Today I wanted to be able to, review with all of you guys to recognize that people do have a multitude of emotions, and sometimes it doesn't seem to make any sense to us that we can feel such opposite things at the same time, but it definitely can happen. And I'll get into a little more detail about what we can glean from that, what kind of information we can take. I also wanted to make the point that joy is how you define it. I think maybe some of us have some preconceived notions of what joy, or what some people call happiness, is, but it really can be a lot of small things that make your life better. I think that we all are capable of finding joy in our lives, no matter what our situations, and admittedly some people are in some pretty rough spots. And I definitely appreciate that and don't want to minimize it. And in fact, that kind of is the how my title came about. So I wanted to give you a little bit of the backstory behind this, and be able to help explain how it all came about. It came with a text message. It was my friend Brian, who I've not seen throughout the pandemic, but he and I had exchanged some emails and texts and phone calls. And this particular day, which it was early spring, so I'm thinking maybe it was March, he contacted me and asked me if I could meet him here at the hospital, that he was here and wanted to be able to talk to me in person, which led to a really painful conversation about something that had happened to him. It really kind of turned my life around, but it definitely has been devastating for him. The picture I included here, obviously, and it's not me or him in that picture, but during this pandemic, I know we've all had this experience of wanting to be closer to each other and not having that option. The information that Brian gave me that day was that he had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and stage 4, so it had already spread. I'm 52 years old. Brian is younger than I am. He's married. He has a 6-year-old son. This was devastating information for me, and to have us both masked up looking at each other the way the two people in this picture are is just, it was bizarre. It was painful. I so wanted to be able to hug or touch him, although, I never would have wanted to expose him at that point to any kind of infection or illness. I had actually already been vaccinated by then, but whoops, accidentally moved that. Sorry. It was something that really shook me, and I got a little teary when I was talking to him, but pretty much held it together and was just doing my best to express support for him. And then I got back to my office and I just sobbed, and it weighed heavily on me the rest of the day. When I got home that evening, I texted him and just asked him how he was feeling following that first chemo treatment. And what he told me, what he responded, was pretty interesting. This picture is of a backyard. It's not Brian's backyard. And actually, this was early spring, and I don't think that the picture was taken in early spring, but it kind of gives the sense of, all of a sudden there was color starting to appear, and we finally had a sunny day. Brian told me that he'd gone home and had gone out into his backyard, and since the snow had finally melted, he was able to see all of the piles of poop that his dog had left in the snow over the winter that now needed to be collected since everything was thawing out. And so he'd spent like an hour and a half out there picking up poop. And he expressed this incredible joy. He said that it made him feel so good to have been outdoors, to have moved around, to have done this thing that needed to get done and would help, take the load off of his wife, who was now going to be taking over a lot of things with the family. And he said, I don't want you to worry about me. I'm always going to find the bright side of everything. And it's ironic to me because I had been sitting there feeling so mournful and about his situation, and he wasn't wasting any time doing that. He's out picking up dog poop and feeling lucky to be able to do it. So yes, that's where the title came from. He was definitely my inspiration and continues to be. So when we talk about emotions and looking for joy, as I said in the beginning, lots of different emotions can coexist, and sometimes they seem like, one would prevent another from occurring. So just as I go through and discuss all of this, I'm going to kind of start with the basics and explain some of the things that we need to do for ourselves to get ourselves in a place where we can be open to joy. So emotions are usually immediate. It's just, this kind of quick response that we have. Sometimes not, though. I mean, there are definitely people who kind of sit and process things, and it takes them a few minutes to sort of figure out what they're feeling. they usually are reactions to what is happening. We certainly we can create certain emotions in ourselves by thinking about stuff, but usually it's a more organic, sort of spontaneous sort of thing that happens. And for most people, emotions change, just depending on what's going on. I have met lots of really fortunate people who say that they're even keeled and happy most of the time. I am not at all familiar with that experience myself. I do have some friends who are what we call Eeyores, and they're the ones that are sort of like this, who maybe sometimes see the glass is less than half full, but aren't necessarily sad, just sort of maybe realistic about things. So one thing that emotions are not are symptoms, and that's a really hard thing to grasp at times when we are feeling these feelings that we don't like. And when I bring this up, I'm definitely not talking about people with, serious psychiatric issues, someone, with bipolar or schizophrenia, something like that where emotions come unbidden and they're really intense and can lead to, some difficult choices. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for, the general population. Our symptoms are not, our emotions are not symptoms. We don't need to make them go away as if we had a fever and to pop some Tylenol. They actually are not something to be avoided, and I am that way at times. I understand, the feeling of not wanting to, experience a certain emotion. But it's not something to be avoided like a flu, and they definitely will not kill you, although for sure at times our emotional states can just feel so overwhelming or just so awful that it's hard to imagine, going on like that for any extended period of time. Emotions also can be pretty messy in that they may come at inconvenient times when we would desire either not to show any emotion at all, or that the emotion may seem incongruent to what's going on. They definitely can feel like too much. They may feel weird or strange when people are experiencing feelings that maybe aren't very familiar to them. And they can actually really seem inappropriate at times. And I wanted to give a personal example of actually kind of all of these all together. When my mom died about 10 years ago, she's originally from Iowa, that's where I live now, but my family had moved to Tennessee many, many years earlier. And so we had a memorial service in Tennessee, and then a second one here in Iowa just a couple of days later. It was an awful lot of traveling. It was pretty hectic. I had arranged both services, and at the graveside service when we were interring her at the cemetery, my mom's sister had arranged for a minister to do some eulogizing, and I think that he was born before the earth was created. He was a very elderly gentleman who just was talking and talking and talking and talking. And finally he said, "Let us pray." And my sister, who was standing right next to me, whispered, "I thought we already were." She wasn't saying it to be funny. She just literally couldn't hear him and didn't understand what was going on. But that struck me right in that moment. I burst out laughing, and I tried not to do it really loud. I think it probably initially came out as some kind of snort, which set my sister laughing. And this man is now praying. What we did was grasp each other's hands and turn towards each other with our heads down, pretending to cry as we shook with laughter. And it was definitely inconvenient, too much, really weird, and inappropriate all at once. But actually, it's kind of a common thing to happen, is that at funerals, weird things happen. There's lots of emotions all rising. So So, perfect example of something coming out in a way that was not intended at a time where it felt inappropriate. So, let me see if I can get that. Yeah. But, our feelings actually are gifts to us. They remind us that we are alive and connected to other people. If we didn't care, if we had no investment in what was happening or the people around us, we wouldn't have any feelings. There would be no point in experiencing anything. They show us what is important to us in that, you will, sometimes people are surprised at like how sad they feel if someone passes, and it's a recognition of, wow, I really valued that friendship more than I realized, kind of thing. And feelings force us to grow. And sometimes it's growth towards happiness and good feelings that we have experienced in the past and really enjoy. But also pain is super important. And I really, really believe this as a psychologist. And I have seen a psychologist myself in the past when I've experienced a loss. And I know the value of pain in that situation too. I don't want to feel that way anymore. So I'm going to get in there and I'm going to work as hard as I can to not feel that way. I'm going to make the changes or do what I have to do to grow. And I, on this side of it, as a psychologist, I actually do appreciate when people are coming to me hurting because they are motivated to do something different. So there's a lot of value in having these feelings that sometimes are terribly uncomfortable. So, I actually put these emotions in here as maybe a response to illness, but, certainly in the midst of the pandemic, it's also, isolation in which a lot of these things can occur. A lot of times people do feel fearful when confronted with illness or the fear of illness. But, when you can kind of dig underneath that and what messages we might be receiving from how we're feeling, an example might be that, well, I'm fearful because my life is precious and I have so much to live for. I want to be here. I don't want to lose this life I have loved. And so that is a natural, response in that situation to be fearful. People sometimes feel sorrow in that there's a lot to grieve. When people have felt good and then they feel sick, when they feel like independent, free people and suddenly an illness or, even isolation of the pandemic makes you dependent on other people to do things for you, bring things into you, whatever, the things that you formerly were able to take for granted are gone, at least temporarily, and that's a loss. That is something to feel sorrowful about. People will feel regret at times, and this definitely is a natural response to, maybe looking back at life and realizing, oh, I had certain moments when I maybe could have done things differently, or a doctor advised me, you've got hypertension, eat a low sodium diet, lose some weight. Well, doctors say that to everybody, and so it's sort of like, well, yeah, and but then, later realizing, oh, if I had done those things, maybe I could have preserved my kidney function in some way or helped my heart function, whatever. And so, it's recognizing that, there maybe were times that you could have made different choices and, you didn't, and it's natural to feel like, I'm sorry I did that. I'd go back and do it differently. Once you, recognize that, yeah, okay, great, I'm getting this sort of understanding of where the feelings are coming from, but like still, what do you do with it? Take a moment, like literally take a deep breath and acknowledge, I'm scared and I'm fearful. And this is why, whether it's I don't want to die, I love my life. But this is where you can start to see a change with all of those, messages that I just mentioned in the previous slide. So if your life is precious to you and you want it to live, then keeping it focused in the present, it's recognizing that there are still a lot of good things here that I value. I mean, there are things that I can like hang on to right here, right now. The loss of independence or feeling healthy, recognizing that unfortunately, even if you have more bad days than good days, it's, being able to stay in that moment, stay grounded with the fact that you do feel good sometimes, and having those moments in which you can immerse yourself. That's like, oh, this is better. This is better. And when you look at, having potentially made different choices in the past, it's like, well, but you know what? I do still have this power. I have this power and I can do something with it. Understanding your power is, I think, the path to being able to find joy. You have different types of power, and I just sort of made up this terminology, although I'm certain that probably parts of it exist in lots of other places. But, thinking about accepting that the power that you had when you felt like a vibrant, healthy person, or a person that pre-pandemic that could go and do anything you wanted whenever you wanted, right now you're not going to be able to use the power that you have internally in the same way. That's acceptance. And acceptance does not mean that you have to like it or want it, but accepting means that this is what it is, and I'll take it as it is. Recognizing that maybe the way you were able to channel your energy previously is not available to you right now, is really the power of transformation. You can still harness your power and take it down a different path. And this understanding of the power that exists within is your ownership of it. No one can give it to you, although it always helps when people are being supportive and cheerleaders for you. No one can take it away either. And so even if someone is negative or a naysayer, that hurts, but you don't have to, let those experiences erode what you possess. So I wanted to give an example of something that I just ran across here at the hospital. I'm using these actual names because this was actually something that was put on our University of Iowa website about a transplant recipient named Ethan Marshall, who's now 17 and lives in Nebraska. And he came here for his transplant, but had been coming for treatment long before that happened. And his family had to make a 7.5-hour drive from their home to here. And so this was the actual quote. "Sometimes we'd leave at 2 or 3 in the morning," says Melanie Marshall, Ethan's mom. "We have a family of 6 kids, so we kind of made it into a vacation. We never looked at it as a stressful doctor's visit because we always found fun things to do before and after. And it's worth the trip. The doctors are so amazing. They're just so loving and personal. When he's there, he's Ethan Marshall. He's not a number." And, just looking at this, just the kind of power that I was talking about, of acceptance. I mean, they're recognizing that, they would never have invited this on their child, kidney failure, but it is what it is. And to be able to transform, to use the energy that they would put into making these trips here, but to turn it into an adventure for the rest of the kids, and then to stay immersed in that moment and recognize that, they can appreciate like how loved they felt by the doctors and that kind of thing. And that doesn't mean that they were, I'm sure they were confronted with really bad news at times when they were doing this, but it was sometimes painful. But by putting themselves in that position where they actually felt in control of the situation, it makes it a little easier to absorb some of the harder hits that we take on. Having power definitely means that you will have emotions. understanding that you can do different things, take different approaches in times of hardship doesn't mean that you're actually controlling the emotions themselves. As we reviewed earlier, emotions frequently come up as just these quick responses that sometimes don't make any sense to us, that may feel really irrational. But then again, remembering that when we do have these emotions, that they can mean something to us, that yes, they're inconvenient, yes, they start feeling like those symptoms that we want to go away, but they're there and we can gain something from them. So let's not put any energy in trying to fight or control them, and understand that if we can just sort of let it in, let it wash over you, you can learn to build a path forward. I worked with a wonderful psychologist once, and I was the client in the situation, and I was concerned about this anger that had been kind of simmering, based on some stuff that was going on in my life. And I was looking at the anger as a symptom and something very unpleasant that I didn't care to experience. And she said, I want you to look at your anger as a crying infant. What would you do if you had, some tiny baby right here screaming? And of course, the screaming itself is aversive. They hit those notes and it just is going to break your eardrums. But of course, I'd pick that child up and I'd hold it close. And she said, your anger is this crying baby, hold it close to you. And she actually made me reenact it, which was weird because it felt both stupid and actually really meaningful, because I actually did feel like I was gathering up all this negative feeling and looking down at it, and understanding that the crying, the pain, the expression of pain was telling me about something deep inside me. And it actually felt better once I was able to embrace it and pull it closer. And that's the power, isn't it? That's how you learn to accept and then channel it in different places. So, as I talk about these concepts, it sounds like this huge thing, and it can almost seem insurmountable, but really it's about perspective shifting. It's about maybe considering how a restriction can actually turn into a possibility, which I know it doesn't seem quite reasonable that would happen, but it's possible. And it's about taking care of some basic life functions that don't necessarily feel like they're leading us to any meaningful place, but they truly are. I included this slide because this is a woman doing Pilates, and it's called a hollow hold. I've started doing Pilates at home, and I look ridiculous, so the woman in this picture has, got these awesome clothes on and stuff. I'm generally really mismatched, and I do it in the morning, so I look like a mess, and I definitely can't hold my arms and legs the way I'm supposed to. But I love my instructor. There's this one 30-minute program that I keep doing over and over again, and she says in the middle of this hollow hold, this is hard work. We are working hard, and we are doing the best we can. And I love the moment that I get to that part of the class. I love it. We are working hard, and we are doing the best we can. And I think it's important for everybody to just hang on to is that this is hard stuff. All of this is hard stuff, and sometimes it may not look real pretty from the outside, but we are usually doing the best we can, and that doesn't mean that we're excelling. Sometimes the best we can would look like maybe a D- in school, but it sometimes still is the best we can. So when we talk about, getting the basics in place, it's the basics for mental health. It's the basics for physical health. The picture on the left is of actually a guy kind of trying to slog his way out of some quicksand. There's bits of quicksand in there. When you're literally trying to pull yourself out of this thing that's sucking you down, all the energy, the distraction, you wouldn't be able to focus to have a conversation or have a thought about anything other than I've got to make sure I can get my foot out of this gunk so I can move forward and I can get to higher ground, which is where the person on the right is. And so when you're creating this foundation, then you see you're free to look out over these beautiful vistas. That's where joy comes to you. But you have to take care of the basics before you get to the point where you can look out there and see joy. Guy on the left, slogging through this stuff, probably not feeling joy except for maybe the tiny moment where he's thinking, I'm still above water right now. And the basics are truly more basic than one might imagine. What I'm going to talk about briefly is you making sure you're taking care of your nutrition, you're getting a little bit of movement in, taking care of sleep, you're being touched. That's been a tough one during the pandemic for me to live alone. And you have social contact. So again, thinking about these different types of power that I had introduced to you earlier, when we talk about nutrition, the acceptance part comes where you're saying, no, I can't just sort of eat the things that I used to enjoy eating, and I really miss a lot of foods. And anyone who, for instance, is on a renal diet is beyond familiar with that kind of experience of giving up so many foods that you may have enjoyed. But, you know, if you can shift that perspective, and the acceptance comes when you say these restrictions aren't punishment, they're actually a tool for me that are going to help me feel better and help me improve my health. And the transformational aspect of it, maybe what you can do is, you know, that you may be pretty frustrated by the limitations in the foods you can eat, but maybe use time in dialysis or, you know, other times when you might be able to, you know, kind of look through cookbooks or, you know, look online and see if you can find recipes that you might enjoy that maybe might make some of the stuff you can have seem more appealing to you. The ownership aspect of it is recognizing that you are ultimately responsible for the stuff you put in your mouth. You know, these recommendations are made for how you ought to be eating, but no one's actually making you eat. If you can actually accept that it is your choice and that each time you choose to make a good decision, it might actually feel less oppressive to you. In terms of movement, I say movement because even though I tend to refer in this presentation as walking, I know some people don't have the ability to walk either because of amputations or paralysis or other issues that may make them wheelchair bound. Movement can constitute a lot of different things. You know, definitely keeping your upper body doing things, or, I mean, even making the effort to just turn and look at stuff instead of sort of maybe slumping and tending to stare straight ahead at a TV or a computer screen or whatever. So in terms of movement, recognizing that even if you can't move as comfortably as you once did, if you are struggling, if you're having pain somewhere, if it's during the pandemic and you literally can't go the places all you want to go, still move around some. It'll help you maintain strength and flexibility and stamina. The transformational part of this is maybe using frustration about having to be on dialysis or having to observe other kinds of restrictions, being stuck at home or whatever, like let that energize you anytime that you're moving, even if you're just kind of stomping up the stairs, or again, if you're maybe just using some weights, if you're, you know, wheelchair bound or whatever, but like use it to energize you. It's a way of channeling that energy. And then obviously taking, again, ownership of, you know, you may not feel like getting any activity in, but you know that once you start doing that, I mean, our brains are so receptive to these endorphins that start spilling, and they're feel-good hormones. And knowing that if you just go ahead and say, I own this, this is mine, I'm going to move, and I know I'm going to feel better. Sleep is huge, and I'm going to make some recommendations here that a lot of people don't like, and I mean, I understand that because I'm sometimes in the same camp. sleep is essential. It is not something that you squeeze in between all the other things you have to do. And, young parents or, people who are just so busy with jobs and family and managing health conditions and all this stuff, it's tough. But accepting that sleep is like any other medication that you need, and you have to carve this time out in your schedule every single night and make it a priority. Accepting that you may not get as many things done in your wake time as you wish you could, but the sleep is essential. And you can actually really use it to your benefit instead of trying to squeeze in all these last things, which, yes, it would be satisfying to mark another thing off the checklist. It also feels really good to disconnect from all the things that maybe stress you out or weighing on you. And so turning the sleep schedule into something that allows you to just disconnect, and you're like giving yourself permission, using that as a way of inducing that release, and taking responsibility for making sure you're trying to get good sleep. It's not a luxury. It is essential for your health. And keeping yourself on these scheduled sleeping and wake times, it's really, really hard. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about it, because so many people don't realize all the things that interfere with getting good sleep. It's so important to really try to go to bed and get up about the same time each day. I know on weekends it's so tempting. You want to stay up a lot later, and a lot of times, it's nice to have the opportunity to go out and do fun things. And then, of course, who wants to wake up to an alarm on the weekends? But if you can keep yourself going to bed maybe a bit later on the weekends, if you are working, and I mean that's a big assumption. I know some people aren't. But, trying not to let your schedule vary too much. A lot of times, even if you don't wake up to an alarm, you will start to naturally wake up a little bit closer to your normal wake time with the alarm. It's important to develop what I just call a settle down routine before bed. If you do the same sort of ritual behaviors every time, it actually is teaching your body that it is time to quiet down. Avoiding any kind of blue light, and that's usually emanates from electronic devices. So I know this may seem an impossible task for a lot of folks, but trying not to use any laptops or computer type stuff before bed. Something that I do with my phone is I set it to automatically transition to the deepest yellow light that is available on it, and it's just a setting under the general settings that you can set it to turn yellow in the evenings. You can either set it for a specific time, or you can just have it do it according to sunset. But that's really important not to have that blue light coming in your eyes, because it wakes you. It's an activating kind of light that you don't want. And of course, also trying not to keep electronics in the bedroom, which again is a real struggle. I have lived my entire life not having a TV in my bedroom. I would not do that because I am someone who really struggles with sleep anyway, and it's a distraction, and you do not want to get in the habit of having to fall asleep to the TV. It's emanating that kind of light that you really don't need, but also not lying there in bed, playing on your phone, playing games, doing whatever. This is a tough one, but don't lie in bed awake for more than 20 minutes unless you are actually relaxing, like doing some type of mindfulness exercise where you actually do feel like you are disconnecting. Don't get up and go other places to sleep. Some people are bad about oh, I'm going to go crash in the recliner, and reliably you can sleep in the recliner. Well, what you're doing is teaching your body, I sleep in the recliner. I fret when I'm lying in bed. So you don't want to do that. But you got to train your body to fall asleep in bed. And then, of course, try not to drink caffeine. For me, it's I try not to after noon. But anything that either is going to give you heartburn, anything too spicy, whatever, don't have any of that too close before you normally go to bed to, avoid that. when you do get out of bed, if you've been lying there for 20 minutes, try to go like maybe read or do something where you're not going to get yourself activated again, like, playing with an electronic game or anything like that. So I wanted to do this relaxation exercise with you, and this is really a quick, easy one. I put it on here in words, but I wish if there were video, I'd actually show you what I'm doing. But essentially, all we're going to do is with one hand or both hands, you're going to just one by one touch each of your fingers to your thumb. So you'll start with the index, you just touch it, and then touch your middle finger, then touch your ring finger, and then touch your pinky finger to your thumb. And let's do this. There's a different word with each one. So peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. You might be amazed at what a grounding exercise this very simple thing can be. When I'm going through my normal life, I'm always kind of like, I'm a bit of a fidgety person anyway. I'm always kind of messing around with my fingernails and stuff, just kind of touching, rubbing, whatever. When I touch that index finger to my thumb and can start this little ritual, peace begins with me. I've also done it when I'm lying in bed and feel like I can't turn my brain off. And when you repeat it over and over and over again, there's something about the repetition of it that's quite soothing. And there are different mantras, so people don't have to use these particular words. I've heard it done in lots of different ways, but I just think that it is such a comforting thing to do, and it's such a nice way of trying to settle that brain down when you're feeling a little jumpy inside. It's accessible to anybody. Touch, as I mentioned, is so important. And it's such a simple thing, but we are human beings. Even if you're maybe more on the autistic side, I've got a nephew who's a bit that way. We need to feel the weight of a living being on us, and that is the thing that saved me during the pandemic. Is I have cats, and so I was so grateful to have a cat that would settle in on my lap or something that I could pet and touch, because I literally went for about a year without a hug. It just about drove me crazy. So do things like get hugs. Especially now that pandemic restrictions are lifting, but if you had somebody that's in your bubble, hold hands, get a hug, just touch, lay a hand on somebody, try to hold animals, pet them, or get a child nearby. They're usually pretty cuddly, even if they are squirmy. When you have the actual luxury to get a massage, sometimes that can be such a release. It lets go of so much emotion. Or get a haircut. My goodness, it feels so nice, doesn't it, when just somebody's like, someone else is brushing your hair or washing it. Social contact is crucial. It is vital to help you stay vibrant within yourself. And so there may be times when you feel avoidant because you don't feel like your best self, or you feel like you look like poop. It's accepting that you need some kind of social contact, and then try to channel that to connect with somebody else. And if you're not thrilled with the way you look, make the effort to make the phone call, but even just text, but like reach out to somebody, make that connection. And just like when I was talking about movement, you may not feel much like doing anything, but you know that you'll feel better once you do it. So take ownership of this understanding that you need this contact with others, and just, take that deep breath and reach out in some way. Which once we have taken care of a lot of these basics, if we're trying to eat right, we're trying to get enough sleep, we're trying to get some movement in, we're getting settled down, we're managing illness as best we can at this point, or managing isolation, that leaves us free, like that person, standing up on that mountaintop looking out at this beautiful sky. This leaves us free to explore joy. So, a dictionary definition, just describes it as that feeling that is that comes after you've hit a certain place, I think, of contentment, or you have achieved something wonderful has happened to you. I like to make the distinction, that joy is not happiness. I think joy is a deeper experience. For people of faith, it may feel like a spiritual sort of thing, but I think happiness frequently is a consequence of joy, but I don't know, joy to me just feels more meaningful and deep, and that's where it can be found in so many places, in the smallest of things. And so that's where I want you to, this is our launching pad, to look for our little pieces of joy, to think about a typical day, the things that you may look forward to, and I'm talking about the tiniest of things, and being able to stay present in those moments. And I'm gonna circle back and talk about this in just a sec, but I wanted to actually move forward with another exercise. This feels weird doing this because we're also kind of detached from each other. We're just looking at a slide here. I'm going to beg your forbearance, and please be a little bit vulnerable. And as you're sitting there, I want you to close your eyes, and I'll keep an eye on the time. We'll do this for maybe like a minute to a minute and a half, so it won't be for forever. But what I want you to do is play a slideshow in your mind. I want you to think of people, of things, anything, things you like, a hobby, anything, places you have been that have meant something to you, anything that you have loved or liked or felt important to you in some way. Don't try and control it. That's the key here, is I want you to just close your eyes, relax as you're sitting there, and just allow these images to come to you. And so I'm going to be quiet, and like I said, I ask that you just let these images come. I will not let this go on too long, so it may feel awkward, but go for it. So here you go. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open your eyes if you haven't already. So I put this slide together. The first time I had the experience of doing this exercise, I was kind of amazed at the different things that ran through my head. And the slideshow, the first time I did it, like, it went on for about 5 minutes or something like that. So there was a ton of stuff that came up. But it's, it definitely involved loved ones. The picture of my house is there. Just, what a comfort, what a joy. I find my house, my sanctuary to be. And, oh my gosh, of course, my cats. And for some reason, when I did this exercise before, I felt weird that my cats played such a prominent role. And the person that was guiding us through this said, oh, it's completely normal to have pets show up. I mean, honestly, they love us better than a lot of our humans do. At least they forgive us for a lot more. So that was sort of my experience. But when you reflect on your pictures, now sometimes, more negative or stressful stuff will sneak in there because our brains are mean to us that way. But when you can reflect on the things that did come up that were more positive, I mean, that's your joy. That's your joy. This is my joy. I had a psychologist, who's a friend, ask me during the pandemic, like, she just said, what is something that brings you joy every day? And I specifically mentioned this particular cat. Her name is Shandy. Shandy is this little cuddly thing that the minute I sit down, she is in my lap, and then she falls asleep. And, some cats sleep where they're, like, slightly guarded, like, they're waiting for a noise to come up. But I love the part where, like, she literally starts to sag, and then her little head tips over and rests on me. It is, oh gosh, I mean, it's crazy how deeply that affects me, but that is my joy. And it's something that I can stay in touch with every single day, whether I've had a bad day, a good day, I'm sad, mad, whatever. When Shandy does that, it's just this touchstone for me. That's joy. So when you're in a place where you feel like you can look outwards for joy, I gave as an example taking a walk, but honestly, if you are stuck in the house, you don't have to go out. Sit near a window, look out, listen to what you hear, smell, make note of the sensations you're feeling. I mean, if you do have an opportunity to interact with your world, that's awesome. Whether, even if you're just in the window, but somebody walks by and you can wave at them or whatever, it's awesome. But touching on all of those things that are part of our basic needs for staying healthy, it allows you to expose yourself to these moments that actually you realize make you so happy or bring you joy. It literally can be the smallest thing, but oh gosh, there's certain smells that I just love. I love honeysuckle. If I get a whiff of honeysuckle, it's just, and so it's like you have to stay in the moment, though. You have to be taking good care of yourself so that you actually can open yourself up to the moment and allow that thing in, and then recognize it. That's what I meant by keeping these things small and trying to stay grounded, because you have to allow yourself to experience it. Be aware that it's actually happening. I suggest that you may try setting a joy goal. And so I am a person that, like, sometimes will say, what is the best part of my day? And I like to share with people when I'm actually going through and experiencing it, like, oh, you're the best part of my day. And I have to say, this has been a wonderful, wonderful part of my day. And there are 3 comments in the chat from Elizabeth Lively, Kelly Goss, and Elizabeth Jones. And, like, you guys totally jacked me up because it just made me feel really nice that you guys, and I don't want anybody to feel bad if they didn't type anything in, I promise. But it's like, I like to let people know, it's like, thank you, that made my day. This has been the best part of my day, and it really has been. So I like to reflect on that, and it's amazing how you realize all these little things that happen to me all the time that bring me joy. Oprah recommends writing down like 3 things before bed, so that, gratitude journal, so that you can be mindful of and reflect upon the things that happen, and make yourself more aware of when you have joy. And, another exercise is to say, what one thing can I focus on that's coming up tomorrow that could be your joy? And I mean, it really can be the smallest of things. Getting up and just knowing that you're going to love that cup of coffee that you may have in the morning or whatever. I mean, all of these little things lead up to such big improvements and moments. I wanted to just throw in this real quick caveat, because I am going to wrap up here in just a sec. But I want you to remember that there may be times when you really do feel too tapped out to experience, those moments and try to stay grounded and appreciate these things. If you are feeling really emotionally exhausted, it doesn't mean that you're completely depleted. I mean, it does mean that in the moment you really might be feeling pretty tired and empty. But again, if you can shift that perspective and look at it as you're building your emotional muscles. If you had gone to the gym and, done all these push-ups and sit-ups and whatever, you would expect that your arms and your stomach or whatever would hurt. But you also know that based on doing that, you get stronger. And that's what happens is, sometimes you really do feel kind of emotionally drained, but it means that you're actually building that muscle. You're learning to tolerate more, and then you can get to that solid ground again where you can start looking for the better pieces. So I already gave you guys the best part of my day. You might want to sit and think about that for you. I want to thank you so much for your time. This picture. I love this little raccoon. He looks like he's smiling. He's not smiling, but this is a little baby that I discovered when I was out walking one day, and the poor little thing had somehow gotten separated from his mama, and he was very feeble, and so I picked him up and brought him home, and I was able to get him to a raccoon rescue, and that picture was taken when he was picked up and was being taken out to create a new family with some other orphaned raccoons. So another moment of joy, pure joy for me. So I thank you guys so much for your attention. If anybody has any questions, I'm certainly happy to entertain.
Well, this is Kathy. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for all of the information that you shared with us. There was so much of it, I could start repeating a lot of it to say, oh, I like this, this, and this. Some things that really caught my attention was using the word power of acceptance and transformation and ownership, as opposed to, yeah, we need to accept this. We hear that a lot, but to say that we have that power, that just changes the whole thing. So thank you for that, and your personal examples help to make everything more real. And I am going to be using those touch finger, that touch finger relaxation all the time. You can use it around people, and you can do it by yourself. You can do it with people, and it's so calming. So
yeah,
thank you for all of that, as well as I like the building emotional muscle. So I think that was helpful to me, because there are the days that I'm feeling down, and it's like, wait, I need to be thankful for all this, this, and this, and it's like, but I can't seem to get out of this space, and that's okay.
Yeah,
So,
and the thing with the power, I'll say this real quickly, it's because it's something I really emphasize to all the patients that I work with, and I work with people who need different types of organ transplants. The worst feeling that human beings experience, and animals as well, is ambiguity. It is not knowing when the next thing is going to come at you. It could be a good thing or a bad thing, but you don't know how to prepare yourself for it, because you don't know when it's coming. You don't know how big or small it's going to be. That ambiguity is extremely distressing. And so when a person can shift their perspective actually recognizing those powers, I think that helps to reduce so much distress. And so I really do hope that people can use that in a way to help them feel like they're not just waiting on something to happen, but they're actually creating their lives as they keep moving through them.
That's important information and extremely helpful. And I will also be sharing that with others. And thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for spending the hour with us. Very much appreciated. I also want to thank those of you who have joined us for the hour. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank the American Psychological Association for their partnership with us on the mental health webinars that we do, as well as our other projects. And I wanted to share one of our latest joint projects, which has just been completed, and it's a new online program on kidney disease in the family. It's a resource for parents and caregivers. It can be viewed at your own pace. It includes short videos, articles, and interactive discussions. And Jewel, would you like to tell the group a little bit more about the program yourself?
Yes, definitely. I'm so happy that this course is finally complete, and we're so excited to have everyone, including DPC members, take this course and share it with others. You know, I was diagnosed with kidney disease, FSGS, as a teenager. In fact, my first kidney biopsy was on my 16th birthday. So my family and I have experienced firsthand how receiving a diagnosis like that takes a toll on the child with the illness, as well as the parents and the other children in the family. So this course, Kidney Disease and the Family, it includes new content created by 2 health psychologists who are experts in their fields and have years of experience working with children who have kidney disease and diabetes. These psychologists thoughtfully prepared readings and fact sheets on how to manage the emotions that may arise in your child or any child who has to live with a chronic illness. And if you're a parent or caregiver, how to help your child adhere to a treatment plan. We all know kidney disease patients have to take a lot of medicine, and we always have to take our blood pressure. There's also different information on different ways to help the whole family cope with a diagnosis like this and cope with the everyday routine of living with a chronic illness. And then there's also guidance in this course on how to tell when your child is struggling and when to seek help from a mental health professional and how to get help. So we hope that you will take this course, share this course with anyone you know who can benefit from it. Taking care of your mental health and helping your child or another child that you care for take care of their mental health is so important, and it can make such a difference when it comes to managing and living with a chronic condition like kidney disease. So thank you so much, Kathy. It's been really great to work with DPC on this course.
And it's been great to work with ATA as well. Please go to the DPC Ed Center website, and you can go to our resources and see this new online course as well as a couple of other ones that we have. Please don't forget to fill out the feedback form, and we invite you to join us on June 24th at different time on that day. It's going to be at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our next webinar, which will be on plant-based diets and kidney disease. Thank you all very much for joining us, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.